Hello, my name
Hello.
is Anubandh KATÉ, and as you know, since last two sessions now, I have been discussing with the authors of the book Rafale Deal, Flying Lies, Ravi Nair and Paranjoy GUHA-THAKURTA, right? That's the book. And I'm also joined by Yann PHILIPPIN, he's an investigative journalist for Mediapart, and he has been also following this deal. We do not have today Ravi Nair because he had some last minute meetings, but we will also be later in the meeting joined by Ariane LAVRILLEUX, who is another French investigative journalist, and she would bring in some Egypt papers files which she was working on, details about that file, which is related in a way to also to this deal. So I start our session. Uh, as we know, in the last two sessions, we focus on the India-specific details of this deal. And today's session is mainly focused on the French details. And this will be the last session today of this series of interviews. So most of my questions will be to Yann today, but it's good to also have Paranjoy here. Before I take in questions, start asking you questions about the French details, from the last meeting, and it's to Paranjoy this time, Yann had a point where he said he possibly could understand the position of Dassault, why it was reluctant to guarantee the aircrafts manufactured by HAL, And in our response, we had said that the RFP clearly said that the vendor had no choice but to accept HL as the main integrator or the main manufacturer, right? But
In other words, if I may briefly interrupt you,
yeah,
the RFP or the request for proposals made it clear, you may agree, you may disagree, that the guarantee would have to be given, in this case, by Dassault Aviation.
so by guarantee, you mean entire set of aircrafts, 126, which included 18 flyaway, as well as 108, which were to be made by HAL. Okay, so this was for everyone. And in a way, if Dassault did not agree later, so it was dilly-dallying or arm twisting or backtracking. And that was what was the accusation. Okay, I think this is clear. Yeah, I think I would like to quickly give also a broad view as the last time we also saw. So this is the picture of how France in a way earns money through its exports. And you can see here the balance of imports and exports. Sorry, this is in French, but it's easy to understand. This statistics is from the period between October 22 to September 23. And it shows the major source of earnings for France. And as you can see, the first one is the defense sector. And in this period, France earned 29.6 billion euros. The next one is perfumes and cosmetics, 18 billions. And the third one is agriculture products. So you can see the main major source of income for France is the defense deals. And as we know, France is now the second exporter of arms after the United States in the world. Similarly, next, on the same line, we also have this slide where we can see the share of French government in different companies. And what are of interest to us are Thales, Safran, and Airbus. And here you can see the huge share, the biggest one, 22% is in Airbus by the French state. The next is Safran, and then there is Thales. So 13% for Safran and 15% for Thales. What is interesting is to note is that there is also Dassault Aviation and MBDA, which have shares by Airbus. So it's an indirect investment into these companies by the state government through Airbus. Yeah, so I think this is what I wanted to show you initially. And now my question is to Yann. because in India, when we talk about defense scandals and deals, what comes to mind is the Bofors deals. While in the minds of the French people, when there are corruptions about defense deals, what comes to mind is the Karachi affair. So apparently, this deal in this deal, France sold submarines to Pakistan in the late 80s, I guess, and there was some corruption. So, Jan, could you briefly tell us about this deal?
I'm not a big expert on this deal, but yeah, basically there's been suspicions of corruption and also what we call retro commissions, meaning part of the bribes, basically part of the money went back to France to allegedly finance presidential campaign.
Right. And there were some French nationals who were killed also in Karachi, apparently by on the at the behest of the Pakistani army. Okay, then let's move on to the Dassault Group, because I went to an interesting article which was written by your colleague Martin Orange, and it's in the Mediapart, and it talks about the 100 years of Dassault in France and why it's important. Before I invite again Jan to add in, I would just highlight a few bullet points from this article, and it says that Dassault has been the main private company which has been in the defense business in France. Interestingly, this company, the Marcel Bloch, who later changed his name and became Dassault, was the founder of this company, Dassault Aviations. And this company was nationalized in 1937 and later again in 1981. And interestingly, he was apparently the only CEO who was happy for this nationalization, who didn't oppose it because he got handsome compensation. He was promised public financial funds and state machinery's full support. What needs to be also taken into note that Marcel Bloch or Dassault was a Jew, and he was also deported to Germany during 9 months during the Second World War. And when he came back, then the French state again invested in him in his company. What is interesting to know here that the French government restricted Airbus to the civil aviation sector, while gave the full free hand to Dassault Aviation to develop the defense aeronautical sector. And what was in particular here, what was interesting, that there was heavy state investment in his company. The model was that all the R&D and the conception and assembling would be kept by Dassault, while the rest would be subcontracted. And in this case, the client, which was the French Air Force, would invest in the development and the equipments and all products. Yeah. So, Jan, this is what I wanted to give as an introduction, but would you like to add anything about the particularity of the Dassault Group in France?
This is probably the oldest defense company in France, the Dassault Group. So it manufactures warplanes, but also private jets, the Falcon jets, which are quite famous among the wealthy people all around the world. And what is interesting about Dassault is that so it makes most of its living from public money, from state money, basically the state buying the warplanes, the Mirage and then the Rafale. And what should also be pointed out is that it's one of the most influential companies in France, I mean, regarding politicians, because Marcel Dassault, so the founder, has been famous for financing political parties, especially the right. He was himself a member of the National Assembly for the right-wing party in France. And it's been the same with his son, who was, so Serge, who is deceased also, was him a senator from the same party, the right-wing party. and
This is
they so
UMP.
both the
Sorry
father
to
and the
interrupt
son.
you.
Sorry, please let me finish. Both
No, the party is UMP, correct?
it changed name. Basically, it's a Gaullist party, but it changed
Oh,
names many times.
sorry.
Today, it's called Les Républicains, but it has been it had several names in the past. It's been the UDR, the RPR, the UMP. It changed a lot. Basically, that's the traditional right-wing party, the Gaullist party. So I'm lost. Anyway, so there's been financing on this party by the father, and the son, father and son were members of the parties, were both members of parliament, and were both very, very influential at the top level of the state, including when the presidents of France were not from their party. For instance, under François Hollande, which was a left-wing president, and it was under his mandate that the Rafale deal has been concluded. Dassault was also very influential towards President Hollande, despite they were not of the same party. So basically, it's one of the most influential firms in France.
Right. Thank you. And apparently, there were also corruption allegations and charges against Dassault, which included deals in France, but apparently also in Belgium. Is that correct?
Yes, Serge Dassault has been sentenced for corruption in Belgium, and is also involved in a very famous other scandal, which is that on top of being a senator, Serge Dassault was a mayor of a city in the suburbs of Paris called Corbeil-Essonnes, and he is been accused to have bribed the voters so that the voters elect him. And he couldn't be judged because he died shortly before the trial, but several of his collaborators have been sentenced for corruption for this, for aiding him bribing voters in order that he is elected mayor in his city of Corbeil-Essonnes. We can also point out that when France signed the OECD convention that forbids corruption, Serge Dassault complained and say, but how do you want me to sell my planes without paying bribes? So basically, there is some kind of a, some kind of basically, maybe it's a bit strong, but basically you can see what Serge Dassault thought about corruption, because he complained that he was not allowed to give bribes anymore after France signed this OECD convention against bribery of foreign agents.
Thanks. I think Paranjoy wants to say something. Yeah, please go.
In our book, we have quoted from an article by Christopher from The Independent, which says that when Serge Dassault died at the age of 93 in 2018, his own associates, his accomplices, were imprisoned after they were found guilty of corruption. The combined fine of about €1 million was imposed on them. And this has also come out in various other publications, including AFP.
So in which case?
This is the case, the contract to refit electronic equipment in fighter aircraft used by the Belgian Air Force.
Yeah, so I talked about it. Yeah, I mentioned that. That's a corruption sentence in Belgium.
That's
right.
Correct.
Thank you. So let's move on now. Yann, what was interesting for me, and I think it's also interesting perhaps to the French population, to know about Reliance Flag Atlantic France Group. And this is something I discovered in the book. It says that this company had a cross-Atlantic underwater telecommunications cable that linked France and the US. And there was an accusation by the French government that there was tax evasion and avoidance practices. And what was alleged that RFAP, Reliance Flag Atlantic France, artificially transferred the profits from its French subsidiary to the mother company of its telecommunications activities, which is Reliance Globalcom Limited, and which is registered in Bermuda, the British Overseas Territory, which until recently featured on the European Union's blacklist of non-cooperative tax havens. So, in this case, the French tax department leveled fined 151 million euros in taxes and penalties for 2008 to 2012 period. And ultimately, Anil Ambani managed to get it reduced to 6.2 million, thanks to his nomination by Mr. Modi into the Rafale deal. Yeah, so there was a kind of a trade, I mean, a deal that was made here so that Anil Ambani could pay less taxes. Could you please tell us if there's anything more to tell about this deal in this company?
Yes, that's a very long story. So this company operates a transatlantic telecom cable and is registered in France. And basically, there's been a standard inspection of this company by the French tax authorities. And so they discovered that the company made no profit, and that the reason for that is that this company paid very big charges to various other entities of the Anil Ambani group. So what we call intra-group charges. Basically, Reliance France was paying charges to other Reliance entities. And so because these entities were registered in tax havens like Bermuda, this has a special status. Basically, this is a very difficult to do that. Basically, you have to justify it because French tax authorities don't want money to to go to tax havens, and so the tax authorities, they asked Reliance to justify these charges. Okay, why are you paying so much money as charges to these offshore companies in Bermuda? And at the beginning, Reliance refused to answer, refused to give documents. They gave nothing. And so the tax authorities, because all this money was going to tax havens, they consider that all the charges were fictitious as an hypothesis. And so basically, they rejected all the charges. And so it meant that the corporate tax should be calculated not on the profits, but on the turnover, because if you eliminate all the charges, the turnover and the profits are the same. You see what I mean? And so that's why they notified this huge tax penalty of 151 million euros. Then at some point, Reliance realized that not cooperating was not a good strategy. So they began to give documents to try to justify that these charges are real, basically that there is real spending, real services provided by the Reliance Group to its French subsidiary. And after they began giving this document, they say, okay, we gave you documents, and so we think that we owe 6 million and not 150. Okay. But the French tax authorities, they were not satisfied. Basically, they knew that some of the charges are real. So that basically 150, it was just a starting point of the negotiation. They were totally aware that that was not the economic reality. But they thought that 6 million was not enough. Okay. And we were at this point of the negotiation where something very strange happened, is that we are so in 2015, and Anil Ambani becomes the new partner of Dassault for the Rafale just before the visit of Narendra Modi to Paris already in 2015. That announces the new deal, basically the fact that the initial tender is withdrawn and replaced by the purchase of 36 aircraft made in France. And so Anil Ambani he is a member of this Indian delegation that goes to Paris for this very, very important announcement. So he is with Mr. Modi. And so he, because he is in Paris with Mr. Modi, he tries to use this to get a better tax deal. And so he talks about his tax problems to the ministers, that is the French minister that he meets in Paris with Mr. Modi, and basically trying to have a favorable deal. And what we revealed in Mediapart, which is really important, the 14th of April 2015. So during this visit in Paris, Mr. Ambani writes himself a letter to the French Ministry of Finance, Mr. Sapin, and also to the French Minister of Economics, which is Emmanuel Macron, so which is today's president of France. And so he personally writes to these two ministers, one of them being our president today, to ask them basically that they intervene, towards the tax authorities so that he gets a better deal. And basically it worked. And at the end, after Mr. Ambani wrote this letter to Mr. Sapin and to Mr. Macron, he got what he wanted, basically exactly the 6 million that he was basically willing to pay at the beginning of the negotiation. So that's a complex case because so we are sure we published the proof that there's been an intervention. We also know that after Mr. Ambani's letter, the minister Sapin basically asked explanation to the tax authorities. So there's been an intervention from the political level to the administrative level. What is unclear yet, and that the French probe is investigating, is basically has this political intervention been effective? So basically, what would have Mr. Ambani got without the intervention? Would have he paid 6 million? Or would have he paid more without this political intervention? That's not totally clear as of today, but basically we made a thorough analysis of basically the final deal that he got, and some experts told us that he shouldn't have paid 150. Basically, the figure of the beginning was not economically relevant, but some experts that we talked to told us that these basically 6 million were basically a gentle deal, and that it's likely that he should have paid more. Okay. So that's the story.
When I go through your article, which is a very detailed article, this last point that you made is really the key. Legally, can you establish what you called quid pro quo? That the reduction in the tax dues to the Reliance flag company was, and the whole association with the Dassault Aviation, that you can connect the two. You know, this political intervention and connecting the two, the quid pro quo, I think that is going to be not easy. This is my view, but I would like to know your view.
Yes, it's not easy because basically I'm not a magician, so I don't know I don't know everything about what happened during this case, and so basically that's going to be the job of the French police and the French judges who investigate the case. Basically, what we're sure about is that there's been this political intervention in a tax case, which is not allowed usually in France. It's normally forbidden for politicians to intervene in a tax case. So this intervention happened. Then at the end, Mr. Ambani got a favorable tax deal. But we cannot be sure today that there is a direct, that this is the direct consequence, the gentle deal that he got of the political intervention. Basically, that's going to be the job of the investigators, of the police who are investigating the case, to sort that out. Right.
Yann, in your answer, you mentioned that the former economy minister of France, Emmanuel Macron, who is the current president, was in a way also involved in this case. But there is one more former president, that's François Hollande. On 21st September 2018, apparently he gave an interview to Mediapart, and I don't know if it was with you, In that interview, he claimed that the Indian government recommended Anil Ambani's company as the opposite partner of Dassault Aviation, and the Dassault or the French government had no choice but to accept this selection in a way imposed by the Indian government. Do you confirm this?
Yes, that's what he told us. Exactly. And this provoked a total storm because the Indian government denied, Dassault denied, basically everybody denied. So what I think personally is that basically he had the courage, or maybe not the courage, maybe he was not aware that this was so sensitive, what he said, and that basically he told the truth. In a bit in a naive way, you know, not I don't think he imagined when he said that to Mediapart the consequence that he would have, and the
Yeah,
fact
by
that
the
he
way,
would embarrass a lot both Dassault, Reliance, and the Indian government.
true. And Francois Hollande is very consistent in giving such declarations. He also gave recently a declaration about France and Germany not wanting to respect the Minsk Accord or treaty with Russia. Well, that apart, but since we're talking about Francois Hollande, there comes also Julie Gaillet, his partner, and the financing of her movie by Anil Ambani. So could you tell us more about that deal, and also link, if there is any link between what Francois Hollande said, was he trying to divert the attention in a way, or is there any link or not?
Because he is claiming that the investment in that film was small, negligible.
That was not small. That was 1.6 million euros. So that's not that small. What is troubling is the timing also, because Reliance announced this financing in January 2016. So shortly after the announcement of the New Deal, to which and the fact that Ambani becomes a new partner of Dassault. And so, of course, we can wonder whether Mr. Anubandh did that to thank Mr. Hollande of facilitating the New Deal or not. So what we can say is that François Hollande claims that he didn't know about it, basically, that he learned that afterwards, that he was not aware of this financing before it happened. So again, that's going to be to the investigators, to the French anti-corruption police, to sort that out and to try to find out whether, whether Mr. Ambani did that to please Mr. Hollande or not, or if it's just a coincidence.
And the timing, because the MOU was signed just after the signing of the MOU, the 1.6 million euro was pledged for that film. So the the circumstantial evidence will, how important is it, will have to be determined by the judges and the prosecutors in France.
Right. Since we're talking about the investigation in France, and although Jan, last time you did brief us about that, I would like again you to give a context, big context for us, because I see there are agencies such as Agence France Anticorruption, AFA. There is also Sherpa, which filed first petition, which was dismissed, and there was second petition. You also talked about two kinds of investigation, one which could be influenced by the executive and one which was independent. Could you please briefly give us a context so that we understand what really is happening?
Okay, so that's a long story. Basically, this started in 2018 when Sherpa is an NGO, a French NGO that is fighting corruption and corporate crimes, basically, which is fighting big corporations' wrongdoings. And so in 2018, shortly after Paranjoy tell me that's the same year, right? That there's been a complaint in India, filed in India, because of when the scandal broke, basically. So Sherpa filed the first complaint to the French national financial prosecutor, which is in charge of the biggest corporate crimes and corruptions, so in 2018. And what we revealed is that the French national financial prosecutor at that time dumped the case, closed the case without investigating. So the only investigation they did is talking off the record to the lawyer of Dassault, which is quite strange. That's the only act of investigation that they
This
did at the time.
happened, Jan, the date was 28 April 2021, when Sherpa's lawyers, Monsieur Bourdon and
No,
Brenha.
that's the second one. That's the second complaint.
You're saying that's the second petition. I see.
No. The first one was in 2018, and at this time, basically the prosecutor closed the case without investigating, against the will of her deputy, because she was a lady at the time, the prosecutor, and her deputy wanted to investigate, and she said, no, we will not investigate. And what is crazy is that a few days later, during an interview in the French media, she said that she closed this case to preserve the interests of France. Which is really crazy. So you have the top financial prosecutor, which is supposed to fight corruption, to be basically in the front line of the fight against corruption, that confesses that she buried a case basically to preserve the national interest of France. Then in 2021, Mediapart published a series of revelations of this deal that we call the Rafale papers, with a lot of new elements. And basically, following this, our revelations, Sherpa filed a second complaint, so based on our revelations. And
That's
at
correct.
this point, it worked, and there's been an investigation opened finally at the end of 2021. And this time, it was not given to a prosecutor, which is formally not independent from political power, but it was given to investigating judges, which they are formally independent. And so basically the probe really started only at the end of 2021. And in parallel, there's been this other agency, which is the AFA, so Agence Française Anticorruption, so French Anti-Corruption Agency, which is different. In fact, the AFA, the French Anti-Corruption Agency, doesn't investigate specific cases. The job of this agency is to check if the big French companies respect their compliance obligations regarding corruption. Basically, they don't look at the cases, they look at the companies. Basically, is everything in place inside the company to prevent corruption? Do the people have sufficient training? Are there enough internal audit, enough controls? How do you manage the intermediaries, that help you to close some deals? So they investigate the system. And what they found out when they did a control of Dassault is that basically the compliance was very bad. The compliance of Dassault in terms of anti-corruption was very, very bad. And also, when investigating the system, they also found some specific elements regarding the Rafale deal, and especially the strange relationship between Dassault and the intermediary Sushen Gupta that we talked about during the last sessions. And what is very strange is that basically there has been no sanctions against Dassault for this. So what the agency said is, please become compliant. But there was no sanction, no fine for this big non-compliant that they discovered. And what is the most surprising is that these specific elements, basically the strange way that Dassault was dealing with this Indian intermediary Sushen Gupta, the French Anti-Corruption Agency kept that for herself and didn't denounce that to the prosecutor. And basically, it's the prosecutor, that's the investigating judges that afterwards had to ask for this document to the AFA.
Right, thanks. In the last sessions, we did not have enough time to visit certain irregularities which this deal involves, and they're quite important. So I just briefly would put them together, and then I would request your comments. So what we know in this deal, what happened was that the seat of arbitration was also changed from Delhi to Geneva. So which means there was no longer Indian judiciary's say in the deal. There was a removal of anti-corruption clause. There was a letter of comfort from the French government instead of a bank guarantee, which is more solid. There was dilution of offset obligations and all. And there is an unnamed official of the Ministry of Defense, and the book quotes it. He said that the documents were not really drafted with the interests of the government of India in mind. So this question is to both Yann and to Paranjoy. Do you agree with this disclosure, or?
I don't know about this, so I will let Paranjoy answer.
I agree with that. There is a top official who spoke with us, Mr. Mohanty, and he used to be the financial advisor in the Defense Ministry, and he pointed it out to us, and he's gave it. He's written an article. He responded to an email. It was most unusual to shift the place, the arbitration center. So obviously there is much more to it that meets the eye.
Right. Thank you. Yann, I have a difficult question now for you. And to balance, I will also try to ask a difficult question to Paranjoy. And I must ask you this question because this is mentioned in the book. And the book says that there were certain accusations against Edwy Plenel, who is the founder of Mediapart. And the book says that Edwy Plenel apparently had worked for the American Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. And this was alleged. The book says that this comes from an article from the Aviator Buzz. There was a blogger in 2021, Shubhadeep. But I went also on the internet, and apparently this allegation was made by the former Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of François Mitterrand. His name is Roland Dumas. And what the argument was that apparently Plenel was lobbying for the American defense equipment suppliers and exerting political pressure on the Indian government not to purchase more Rafale aircrafts, and this way he could have increased the chances of US companies. How do you respond to this allegation?
It's total bullshit. That's false.
Okay, that's a brief and direct answer. Thank you.
No, and there's never been any material element supporting this.
Okay.
Basically, that's totally bullshit. And there's never been even the beginning of a proof of this.
Okay.
That he was a CIA agent.
Right. Paranjoy, now it's your turn. In your book, you claim that you have tried to represent both sides to this deal. I mean, people who are for and who are against. Your main headline of the book, the cover page, in a way points fingers towards the Prime Minister of India. But as far as I remember, I do not see a mention of either the Prime Minister office reply or Prime Minister's reply to your allegations or to this book. Did you try to contact him? Did he reply? And if not, would you include his reply, his say, in the next edition of the book?
Why us? Every, including the present leader of the opposition, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, all raised the same allegations. There was complete silence on the part of the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's office, and the supporters of the ruling regime, that is the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is a right-wing Hindu nationalist party. Remember that these allegations were made in in the public domain. We included the interview of a supporter of the deal that was Raghunath Nambiar, Air Marshal Raghunath Nambiar. He gave his version. We stuck to our side of the story, and though the interview ran for a very long time, when he saw the transcript, he redacted very large portions of it, and we published what gave us the green signal to publish it. And that is as far as, and we gave it the title that people were wondering why the Indian Air Force was getting involved in politics. Many things he said that he cut out himself. He did not want him to be attributed. As far as the allegations against the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office, as I mentioned earlier, it is not just us. Every time these allegations have been led, the supporters of the ruling regime had said the Supreme Court has given it a clean chit. The Controller and Auditor General of India has given a clean chit. In our book, which was published in November 2022, and subsequently it was updated because of Yann PHILIPPIN's new revelations that came out. So after that, we published an up version of it, and it has been updated all the way up to August of 2021 minute. I'll just tell you exactly the date. Yes, it has been updated all the way up to, yes, September 2023. So that's less than 1 year away. We are in July 2024, September 2023. Okay, there has been not a single response to our book. Nobody's challenged it. It is a book that is available in the public domain. Anybody, it is available on Amazon. All these months have gone by. If anything that was written is factually incorrect, by now, somebody should have said it. Except whenever this question has come up, the same thing. We've got a clean chit from the Supreme Court. We've got a clean chit from the CAG, the Controller and Auditor General. These are the standard responses. The Prime Minister's office has not responded.
Sorry, I must add that, I wrote many articles on these cases and on this case, on this Rafale deal. And multiple times I asked questions to the Prime Minister's office, to the Ministry of Defense, but also to the agencies that investigate the case in India, to ask them why they didn't open a specific probe about this. So, namely the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate. And I never got an answer. Never. So there's a clean will from the Indian government not to respond on this.
Yeah, already has got a copy of our book. So the point is, all this, I mean, there have been months and months that have gone by.
True.
Nobody's responding.
Right. Moving ahead, when we look at this deal, and I'm very tempted to use the French cliche, can we say that this has been India's Waterloo deal? And interestingly, the French are the winners here. But in the book, you briefly talk about what impact this might have in the prospect for India as the arms buyer in the world defense deals in future. How would other vendors, future sellers of arms would deal with India and would see India?
That's a difficult question to answer. The arms trade and the military-industrial complex world, they don't care about, they're completely not just amoral, but immoral. So I don't think it matters to them. What I think will matter, in my opinion, is what happens in France, what happens to the investigation that will take place in France. How it will affect the trade between India and there's a proposal to buy more Rafale aircraft for the Navy now. Let's see what happens. So if everything, the who are in this business, and Yann can substantiate what I'm saying, they have a very thick skin. They are brazen.
Yeah, but I agree with Paranjoy says. Basically, you know that corruption has been widespread in these big defense deals. And for the anecdote, before we signed, I mean, France and many other countries signed the OECD Convention against bribery of foreign agents, you can even deduct the bribes from your taxes. When in France, there was a special line in the tax declaration of the companies where you could deduct the bribes from your taxes. So corruption was not even legal. You could have a tax break, you know, because when you were corrupting people abroad. So that was more than 20 years ago, but it's to give you the context. And so there's been a lot of corruption cases regarding arms deals. And yes, basically, it's not because there's one more scandal that I would think this would change anything between India and the countries that sells weapons to India.
And if I can just quote one line from what Mr. N. Ram has written in our book in the foreword, it's the second paragraph. He says, worldwide, the arms trade has become synonymous with bribery and influence peddling under the cover of national security and the high interests of the state. So, you know, according to Mr. Ram, he says several scholars and experts have said that at least 40% of all the corruption in legal international trade is linked to the arms deals.
Right. Thank you. So I think although it's very clear that there was corruption in this deal and from both sides in France and French and the Indian side, we should also remember that there were a lot of brave Indian officers from Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Law and Justice, HAL and others who resisted, who pointed out the irregularities in this deal. And on many occasions, they had to pay as well a price for taking the stand. They were either sent on leave, they were fired or not promoted, and a lot more. So a thought to these brave people. I asked this last question to Paranjoy, and then we will invite Ariane. Paranjoy, you have written that the book is dedicated to Vasudevan, Mr. Vasudevan. Could you, in just 2-3 lines, tell us who is this person and why did you dedicate this book to him?
The late Professor Hari Vasudevan was my brother-in-law. He passed away in May of 2020, in the first wave of the COVID. He passed away on the 10th of May, 2020. And he was a professor who taught history at the University of Calcutta, extraordinary scholar of the history of Europe and Russia. He had read drafts of the manuscript of the book and made several comments and several observations. And he had promised me that he would write a very detailed introduction to the book. But that was never to be because he passed away in the first wave of COVID. And he was married to my sister, who has been widowed. And that is the reason why we dedicated the book to him.
Thank you very much. And now I welcome Ariane LAVRILLEUX. I'm delighted to have you here. So just to tell you, with me here is Paranjoy GUHA-THAKURTA, who is the co-author of this book, along with Ravi Nair, who could not join us.
And the publisher. I'm also the publisher.
True. And there's Yann PHILIPPIN that you know. And to introduce Ariane, so Ariane is an investigative journalist. She's based in Marseille. She specializes in defense deals, human rights violations, and impact of economy on the environment. She works for different radios like RFI, RTS Suisse, Radio France. She also works for magazines and investigative media such as Mediapart, Disclose, Le Monde Diplomatique, Alter Ego, Revue Dessinée. And she has been very closely following the Egypt papers, the sale of Rafale and other French armaments to the Egyptian dictator Marshal al-Sisi. So welcome, Ariane. Thank you for being here. Thanks. So before I start asking you questions, I just want to also open this debate and give a broader sense, since you are here and bringing in the Egyptian angle to this. But in any case, the French sale of armaments has been I mean, there has been a lot of criticism against it. And if we take a small historical background, so France has been accused of selling armaments to South Africa during the apartheid period, 1970s and 80s. Then during the Iraq and Iran war of 1980. Then to Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates during 2010, and war crimes were committed by these countries in Yemen. Then I talked about Egypt in 2010. Egypt, which bombarded both Egyptian and Libyan civilians, used Rafale and MBDA-made missiles and other armaments, French armaments. Morocco has been also receiving French arms and using it in the Western Sahara region against the rebellions. And very shocking and surprising, to me at least, was the case that France has been selling arms not just to Ukraine, but also to Russia. Companies such as Thales, Safran, Lindred, ST Microelectronics are involved. There's an investigative paper by Blast, investigative journal, which said that during 2015 to 20, France has been delivering armaments to Russia against the sanctions put in place by European Union as well as United Nations. And moreover, it has been delivering arms to Russia until at least April 2023. So both Thales and Safran are delivering arms and also to Israel. Yeah.
It's not arms per se, but it's dual use components that are used on weapons in Russia, and most of the time they don't sell it directly, but they sell it through subsidiaries. Yeah.
Thank you. Now my last slide, and then I invite Ariane. So this is about defense armament sales to India. Perhaps, yeah, do you see my screen? I guess.
Yeah, I see the screen.
So this is India specific, how armaments were sold to India by France. And you can see in dark gray, these are the orders placed. And you see a shoot up in 2015. And the lighter gray is when the armaments were delivered. And I think these are the Rafale in 2020, the Spirit. Right, then, yeah, this is where it could be interesting. This is the sale of Rafale in the world to date. So this article is from Les Echos, and 3rd December 2021. In all, internally, the French Air Force bought 192 aircrafts, Rafale, while the rest of the world, 242 were sold. India numbers at 36, while Egypt is at 54. And these are the numbers of the prices. So this is also a way to compare perhaps the prices. Yeah, so I open now the floor to Ariane. Could you tell us more about the sale to Egypt of these Rafale and other armaments, how you investigated, how and what was the response from the French government? Please let us know. Yeah, tell us.
Yes, Egypt was the first country to buy Rafale. It was under a young dictatorship, a young new dictatorship, military dictatorship that was in place since 2013 after one of the biggest massacre of Egyptian modern history, where 1,000 civilians were killed in 2 days. So this new military government was lacking support, especially from the states. So they were looking for support on the international scene, and France was among the first country the first democratic country to answer positively and to send official from the government to discuss with the new with the army in order to sell weapon, because selling weapon is not only a business. It's not like any business. It creates a strong link of dependence between the seller and the buyer, and it's a way for the buyer to guarantee a kind of a support from their from the country that is selling, so France in this case. And especially when we are talking about the most expensive aircraft, combat aircraft of French history, that was hardly selling, that it has been, the program was running for decades and no country wanted to buy it. There were some attempts in Brazil and it failed. So it was a huge diplomatic success for the French president at that time and his Ministry of Defense, Jean-Yves Le Drian. So it was like a double win for France and Egypt, as they see for the top level of authorities. It cost something to the French state. It was not it was not for free, because actually Egypt didn't buy it cash. They buy it through a loan, and the loan is still guaranteed with 60% of the loan is guaranteed by the French state and French public bank. So it means that if Egypt doesn't manage to refund the loan, then it will be French taxpayer who will pay the Rafale to Egyptian army. So it's the case for the contract of 2015. So first Egypt bought 24 Rafale, and again in 2021 they bought 30 Rafale. And that deal was for 3.75 billion euros. And it was again a loan, and this time it was guaranteed, of which 85% by the French state. So at that time, Egypt was going through a very deep economic crisis. Less and less banks wanted to do a loan, so they request highest level of guarantee, and that was again the French state. I'm thinking that to show you how important it is for the French state to support this kind of export, because this is the Rafale is part of the diplomacy. It's part of the French diplomacy, and selling a Rafale is seen in the French state as a diplomatic success, as a part of the soft French power. And it was it came back from de Gaulle. Actually, you mentioned all the other contracts from South Africa, Iraq, all dictatorship. Actually, France made a speciality to sell weapons to dictatorship, because in the 50s, during the Cold War, there were the States and Russia. France there were these two big sellers, and France wanted to sell to other people, so there were not a lot of countries remaining, so they choose the few that were remaining, which is dictatorship or rogue state. And this is the same. Policy, public policy that is applying now, and Egypt has been chosen for that. India, it's a bit different, because in the public opinion of France and public and in the opinion of French leaders also, it's a country with which we can have full relationship that are, I would say, there is no contradiction with the human rights values that France show off. Just to conclude, Egypt was and is still very important for the Rafale, what I would call the Rafale diplomacy and arms diplomacy of France, and they are still negotiation ongoing to increase weapon sales to Egypt.
Yeah, I think what really is striking in what you just said to me was the fact that France sold Rafale aircrafts to Egypt and gave itself, I mean, they gave bank credit to Egypt so that they could buy it, and the French taxpayer was a stakeholder. But at no point of time, the French population was asked if they would agree to this deal or not. So there's a deficit of democracy here.
Yeah, that's true.
And similar, I mean, again, there perhaps is also conflict of interest because we know that in 2020, Marshal al-Sisi, in a very secretive way, was given the highest civilian award, Légion d'honneur, by Emmanuel Macron. And the French
2021, yeah.
Sorry, and the French media was kept away. It was through the Egyptian website that the French media came to know. Last year, it was Mr. Modi who was also given Légion d'honneur. The French defense minister, Le Drian, I forgot his name. He also,
yeah, Jean-Yves Le Drian.
Jean-Yves Le Drian, thank you. He also received the highest civilian award from Egypt. So is this a way to compensate big dignitaries or people in office for the deals they signed with France?
I mean, dictators are always looking for public acknowledgement. The fact that other countries are endorsing them, greeting them. There were a very important moment when President Trump thanked his very good friend, President Sisi. So you could think that this decoration doesn't mean a lot for a dictatorship, for dictators that has not that power is very fragile. This kind of symbolic decoration are important, and in fact this decoration of Légion d'honneur happened in December 2020, and 5 months later Egypt signed the contract to buy 30 more Rafale. So I wouldn't say one created the one event created the other, but it shows definitely that there is a close relationship and a will to thank and to please, a will to please the Egyptian top army authority from the French leadership.
You initially mentioned that India perhaps is a better candidate to sell arms for France compared to other openly declared dictators. And we know there are lots of human rights violations and journalists are being harassed in India. But what the Indians should also be surprised that the French state isn't either kind to their journalists who go in a sensitive file, in a sensitive direction. And you were at the receiving end last year where you were detained for more than 30 hours, I guess. Could you please tell us about this experience and in general, how the French state behaves with investigative journalists like you?
Yes, press freedom in France is at stake for many years now. It has been a little bit undercovered, but it's true that since I would say almost 10 years since the new wave of terrorist attack, there were an increase of terrorism law that started to target a Muslim community, civil society, and journalists. And more journalists are arrested during demonstration, for instance. More and more journalists are being questioned by police for doing their job, questioned to give their sources. So my case made the headlines, but actually there is France is one of the country in Western Europe where there's the most violation against press freedom. The most arrests in the past years have happened in France, in entire European Union. So it's not arrest that last many months, is like in Egypt or in dictatorship. It's a few hours or few days, but still it's very concerning for a state where there is rule of law and democratic principles. So in fact, in September, I was detained 2 days. My house was searched, my computer was searched by cybersecurity analysts from intelligence office in France. They were 6 agents searching my computer, phone, looking at my notebooks and looking for the sources that disclose that there are arms deals with Egypt and Russia, as you mentioned, and I've been interrogated several hours. I kept silent because this is still a right in France. But this is a clear intimidation, not only to me, to my colleague and my newsroom. It's a clear intimidation to any journalist who want to do investigation on defense stories. And you may not know, but in France, publishing stories, information about the army that are covered, most of this information are covered by what we call defense of national security. The Secret of National Security. This is an offense, and it could lead you to 5 years in jail. And this is exactly the same offense, the same penalty in Egypt for revealing military secrets. So there is no protection of journalists when we investigate on arms deals.
Right. Thanks. I think it's an important point, especially from the point of view of the Indian audience, who tend to believe that the West, Europe, has better journalistic atmosphere, or the response from the government is way better than what we have in India, which perhaps is true, but there are lots of details. And as Ariane rightly said, there are huge problems in France. But since we're talking about the media, I think it's worth giving a look at,
yes,
at how is the media situation in France. In India, it's very clear. We know that there are big billionaires, Adani and Ambani, who govern and control most of the mainstream media. I personally was surprised and shocked that the situation in France is not that, it's not that different either.
You should not say most of the media. Yes, Adani and Ambani, their groups have very major interest in the media, but I would rather, instead of saying most of the media, you can say large sections or substantial sections of the media. That will be more accurate. Yes, please continue.
Why not? Okay. In France, the mainstream media, the group that interests us is this Dassault family, which has the Figaro and other groups. That's the business magnate that we're talking about. But then there are also Patrick Drahi. He has this RMC and other network. We have, of course, Xavier Niel. We have other groups. I forget now the name. Maybe Ariane can help me. But this is to tell,
you have basically you have four billionaires who are sharing most of private media. You have public media, state-owned media, and that are independent. That they don't directly respond to the government. There is an authority, independent authority, that regulates the public station. public and radio stations. So this is what you point. And there is then big company LVMH. So LVMH is Bernard Arnault, who owns big clothes brand, big clothes brand, Vuitton, etc., Sephora. And you have another big billionaire called Bolloré, who is the far right Islamophobic billionaire who ran a campaign in favor of the far right movements, different far right movements in France. And you have another one in Marseille, where I am, which is a Syrian Lebanese billionaire who owns a big company of maritime trade, CMA CGM. It's big cargo all around the world. You have maybe heard of them during the explosion in Beirut port. They are linked they have some ties with Bashar al-Assad. And this big company owns several TV channels. They just bought several TV channel and newspaper, and they are a rising billionaire who tend to be more close to the current government in place, so more center, close to Emmanuel Macron.
Right. Ariane, could you tell us how has been Le Figaro's response, because it's owned by Dassault,
Yeah.
to these investigations and these deals?
Well, I think I'm not sure Le Figaro spoke about our investigation. Actually, it's not only Le Figaro, it's most of media who didn't speak about our investigation. Some private radio, because some journalists wanted to speak about it, broadcast our investigation. Public station, public TV also did a big investigation. But most of journalists didn't showcase the story. I wouldn't say it's a censorship from the state. It's mostly because they think it was not interesting. It was not a public interest story. Because we reveal the state secret, the weapons deal, but we reveal how France helped Egypt to kill civilians in the desert. And this story for most of French journalists was seen as a foreign affair story that is not really concerning, not really interesting for the French audience. And actually, my investigation got attention when I got arrested. So last September, and then all other media started to publish, to talk about my story, including Le Figaro, and the newsroom of Le Figaro participated in an op-ed to denounce that the attack I was the target. So there is a common understanding among the community of journalists, including in media that are owned by private businessmen doing weapons deals, that the press freedom is something that we should protect, and the secret of sources is a core democratic principle.
True. Since we're talking about press freedom and both India and France are involved, I have this last slide, and I would also request Paranjoy to join, to put his screen on, I mean. The ranking here is from Reporters Sans Frontières, RSF. And you can compare, you can see here there's a comparison between India and France, 2014 to 2024. And when it comes to India, there has been, I mean, there's ranking and there's global score. And you can see the ranking for India has dropped from 140 to 159. So that's a clear downgrade. And of course, along with it, the global score has also decreased. And the global score here says it's a quantitative tally of abuses against journalists in connection with their work and against media outlets, and a qualitative analysis of the situation in each country or territory based on the responses of press freedom specialists including journalists, researchers, academic, and human rights defenders, to an RSF questionnaire. So this is how they calculate the global score. And in France, what was surprising, that although they have improved upon their ranking, their global score remains almost the same. Yeah, so Ariane.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the situation is terrible in India for my colleague journalists, and especially women journalists who receive death and rape threat almost every day if they challenge if they challenge official narrative or far-right narrative. But in France, also what said RSF is that it's the worst score in all European Union, like in all democratic European Union, because now we have several countries that are falling out of the rule of law, which is especially Hungary, where there is no more press freedom and almost no more press freedom. But also, I think maybe in India, you have a more acute awareness of press freedom, of the attack on press freedom, because you have seen this rise, and there is probably more mobilization, social mobilization, to denounce what's happening. In France, very few people realize what's happening. Very few journalists themselves protest when they are targeted by police, when they are questioned by police. It's starting to change, but we are really there is little community organizing. There is a very low rate of unionist. There is a very little rate of journalists who are part of a union, which is, I guess, a bit different in India. So I think in France, we didn't want to see, or we forgot that these attacks are happening more and more and more. And as you see, it's also qualitative analysis. And I think lots of journalists, especially independent journalists in local area, are not reporting their attacks. I mean, you have terrorist attacks on journalists. They are people who are entering house of journalists because they didn't like an article, because they take off their wheel of their car to provoke accident of journalists in Brittany because they report about intensive agriculture techniques and the agro-business industry. So there is a lot of press aggression attacks that are under the radar. I don't want to say that the situation is similar in India and in France, but we need to see the whole picture, and especially how much the French population and society is under, I wouldn't say educated, but less aware maybe than the Indian society.
Yeah. But thank you. Paranjoy, could you give a quick reaction?
These would be my closing remarks.
Yeah.
You have put out the ranking and the media freedom, the press freedom, freedom of expression indices that have been put out by organizations like RSF. My opinion is that at one level, this is a global phenomenon. It's happening across the world. As far as India is concerned, specifically India is concerned, we have seen how, especially over the last 10 years, after the government came to power, the index has coming down. What is the difference? In the past, whoever has been in power, they have not been tolerant towards the critics among journalists. The difference is that this government, the present government, has been vengeful. It has been not just intolerant. Several law enforcing agencies, including the Central Bureau, including the Income Tax Department, the Enforcement Directorate, and they have gone after the media organizations. They have gone after media organizations because of their commentary and their analysis. It has even happened to the BBC in India. It has happened to several media organizations, whereas the journalists in the small towns and in the remote areas, they are more vulnerable. Even the organizations have been harassed by the law enforcing agencies. And one of the reasons for it is that the media is seen to be, quote unquote, an enemy of the nation. Just because you are the enemy of the government and those who are in power, you are made out as if you're the enemy of the country. And their patriotism is being questioned. Now, the laws have been changed, the rules have been changed, and they've been aimed at, stifling freedom of expression, which is a fundamental right of every Indian citizen. The reasonable restrictions on the right to free expression, this term reasonable has been misinterpreted. The laws on sedition, the laws on defamation and libel, in my opinion, they have been misused against the critics of the government. And Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, happens to be the first and only Prime Minister of India who has never in India faced an unscripted, spontaneous press conference where anybody can ask him any question. And he has given only interviews to particular persons who he has picked, and he has chosen them. And they've not asked him difficult questions. They've asked him questions that he wanted to be asked. And there have been like scripted interviews instead of being spontaneous interviews. All of this has resulted in those who are independent journalists, those who believe that the job of journalists is to hold truth to power and expose corruption in high places. They are facing severe challenges, including financial challenges, including by withdrawal of advertising support, not just by the government, but by those supportive of the government, including big business houses. And as you pointed out earlier, many of the two of the richest men in India, they are also controlling they have large media interests and media empires. So this would be my observations and comments.
Thank you, Paranjoy. And we are now reaching the end of this interview. I have just one last question to both of you. You can respond. And the question is, few years before, when I was working in Bangalore, I met a French CEO of a very small company. And his argument was that in India, to make business, to survive, there's no way, no option but to do corruption. He said, if I wouldn't do corruption, then I wouldn't win the contract. And if I don't go ahead, then someone else would. How would you respond to such arguments when it comes to defense deals, which are very infamous for having corruption in it? Is there a way to do business without corruption?
Yes, that's something that that I hear a lot also. It's a way to take off your own responsibility as a company and as a state. As a company and as a state, you have a social responsibility. You don't do anything you want, anything you can. You have a code of conduct, and you have to abide by law. And the French state signed the treaty on trade arms to regulate the arms trade. And it says that you cannot sell weapons to a country that will use it to commit human rights violation, to increase and to use it against civilians, for example, to perpetrate war crimes. So this is very clear, and this is a treaty that more than 100 countries signed, including France. they have to abide for. So it's not something about what we think we should do, yes, but we can't do. This is the rule that we commonly have chosen, have ratified together as states. And whether you like it or not, this is the common rule, okay? So you can invent any kind of excuse that another rogue state will do. We try to make the word a place that is a little bit less horrible. So please respect the common rule. And the second argument would be, okay, you want to sell to a dictatorship, fair. But where is the word of French citizen? Where is the word of Indian citizen? If you think it's important to sell weapons to dictatorship because you will keep a canal, you will keep a way to discuss with the top level authority of this dictatorship or like illiberal countries. Okay, but let's have a public debate. Let's have a vote. In France, this is forbidden. Even not citizen, but even MPs can't ask question on arms delivery after they have been delivered. All the document, all the decision are state secrets. So when there will be a public debate, a little bit more transparency, then you can invoke this kind of argument and say, yes, but if we don't do that, it will reinforce China and so on. But we don't have the full information disclosed, so we can't make enlightened decision, enlightened debate, and we can't fully scientifically respond to this kind of argument because we are prevented to think and to be informed.
Right. So deficit of democracy, as we said.
You know, I agree with what Ariane has just said. I have nothing more to add, except to say that the best way to prevent or curb or reduce corruption is to have greater transparency in public. And the role of the media in a democracy is to hold accountable those who are in positions of power and authority, make them more accountable when their discretionary powers are being misused, to hold truth to power. I mean, I think without transparency, without accountability, you cannot have true democracy. And in the opinion of several people, including myself, the different indicators show that there's been a democracy deficit, that India describes itself as the world's largest democracy because we have more than 1.4 billion people. But the question is, are we moving towards a better democracy, a stronger democracy? And that can only happen if the media, you call itself the fourth estate, and other agencies that are responsible for greater transparency in public life become stronger. We have seen how those who have been in power in India have diluted the provisions of the Right to Information Act, and how these acts and rules, even after they are made, they are not implemented properly. So this is at one level, as I mentioned earlier, a global project. But when it concerns your own society, and when you're seeing these laws are not being properly implemented, and you still want to say we are a democracy, then all I can say is that you can't fool everybody all the time. We have to fight and continue to fight to ensure greater accountability of those who are in positions of power and authority. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you.
One last thing, since you have the book in front of you, would you please read the beautiful poem of Bob Dylan that you included in the book, and then we stop.
Bob Dylan, earlier known as Zimmerman, Robert Zimmerman, who won the Nobel Prize. This is an excerpt from an article, a song that he wrote in 1963, which was sung in 1963. It says, "Come, you masters of war." The name of the song is Masters of War. So it says, "Come, you masters of war, you that build the big guns, you that build the death planes, you that build all the bombs, you that hide behind walls, you that hide behind desks. I just want you to know I can see through your masks. Let me ask you one question. Is your money that good? Will it buy you forgiveness? Do you think that? I think you will find when your death takes its toll, all the money you made will never buy back your soul. This is Bob Dylan for you. 1963, Masters of War.
A big thank you to Paranjoy and to Ariane for all your time. This has been an exciting discussion. I learned and discovered many things thanks to you. And I hope the readers, be it in India, in France, would also take this book and discover on their own. Thank you very much. And I hope to talk to you again. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.